Okay.
Cool.
And 10, 9, 8,
Are
7,
you ready?
and action. Yeah, let's hit it.
Okay. I just told Agnes and Flavia to check in. Hold on. Oh yeah, I'm starting.
Okay. There'll probably be some people who are arriving a little bit late, but here we are.
We've got at
Can they
least
see us?
Agnes and Flavia.
Huh?
At least we have 2 viewers.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see it live yet, but they can see us.
They can?
No, I'm asking.
Oh, hold on.
Well, it says 33 is going or interested. So
I'm starting.
yeah.
Yay, we're live. Hi, Carsten. Good morning.
Good morning, and cheers and coffee.
Yeah, cheers. How are you?
Everything is good. It's a nice day in Lima. It's not too hot. The sun hasn't come out yet, so it's a nice breeze. So I'm sitting outside here in my garden, and I cannot complain. It's a good day today, and it's Easter Thursday.
It is. It's nice to have 2 days of complete quietness. Well, we've had many days now, but today,
Yeah, almost every day is quiet.
but it's nice to know it's Thursday and there's no cars outside. There's a good
Right.
feeling.
No, I mean, one of the advantages of this kind of lockdown is that the air of Lima and many other places around the world has improved a lot, and I can definitely feel it here. So that's very, very nice.
Yeah, and saying hi to all of our readers who are joining us. We have Flavia
Good
who's
morning.
saying
Good morning.
hi. So I can see everyone's comments and questions, but I think we want to just start with the story that made headlines around the world.
Yeah, no, well, it's been a week now. I remember sitting here at home a week ago, making sure that the last puzzles were in place so that the flight with almost 300 Vikings could take off at 11:30 and fly to Copenhagen. So it's been a week. I mean, one gets a chance. Once you're in it, you never think about it. You just basically act on every opportunity or reaction there is. But once it's all over, you take a little bit of time to reflect, and you go like, "Damn, I was lucky. Well, I could also have done it this way." And so there's there's a whole learning process afterwards, But overall, yes, it was a great experience, and thank you very much for bringing up the idea of sharing it with you today.
Yeah, because you've had time to reflect and also just give us a little more details, because I know, all the work that you've done, but not exactly how it all came to be, all the connections you must have needed in order to, because all transportation, was closed between cities, between regions, and so many passengers were everywhere around Peru. So, tell us a little bit about what it took to make it happen.
Yeah, well, it all starts on March 15, where our president, Martin Vizcarra, he decides that we need to close down the country to avoid the spreading of the coronavirus. And at that point, we look at the map and say, where do we have our guests sitting? Because in a situation like that, it's always, our first priority is to bring people to Lima. Lima is the capital. Lima is the best place for evacuation. It is the best place for bringing in big flights and bring people out. So that was our first mission. It was how many can we get to Lima in that split second, and we took, basically brought everyone we had everyone we had traveling with us to Lima on the 16th. We were very lucky because I will say the news was released like at 9 o'clock Sunday night, and by 10 we had booked flights for all our guests from different places around Lima, Peru, and brought them into Lima. And then they arrived to Lima, and we had to find them hotels. And it sounds easy that there must be a tons of hotels, but there really isn't, because the first thing hotels does is they start to be worried and say how I need to close down to avoid to have people infected in my hotel, or to avoid having the expenses of managing a hotel with 2 rooms. So there's a lot of things going on, but we managed with one of our chains to open up 2 hotels and make sure that our guests were safe in these hotels. We
Wow.
thought it was for a couple of days, but that seemed not to be the case, no?
I think we got cut off from Facebook. Hmm. I wonder if there's a time limit on Facebook Live. That's really strange.
I think so. There should not be.
I don't know why we got cut off.
Well, why don't we just continue and then we publish it afterwards?
No, we're going live again, so hold on.
Maybe it's the signal.
We're
We're back.
I don't know what happened. Sorry, everyone, but we're back.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with internet in these days. I will say normally the usage of internet, let's say, reaches 50, but during these lockdown periods, it reaches 90 and 95, and there's an overload. And depending on where you are in the country, you can really, lose contact, so to speak. I have a neighbor who lives 50 meters from me, and he called me yesterday and asked me if I had internet because he's had been gone like for a couple of hours. So depending also on the provider. Anyway, so the first thing was to bring people into Lima, and we did so. And we had imagined that, we will find a solution to bring people out in a couple of days. But basically, every commercial airline shut down within 24 hours, and the borders were closed. And we had some opportunities, that we looked at, but they were a little bit too scary, because the thing was, maybe we could get them to Bogota, maybe we'll get them to Santiago de Chile, maybe we'll get them to Miami, but we couldn't see what would happen after that, because these countries also started their own process of closing down the borders.
Right.
And I think, and then we basically spoke to our guests and say, where do you prefer to be stranded? Do you prefer to be with us here? Or do you prefer to be in Sao Paulo or in Bogota or in Miami or in Vancouver or wherever it was that we were able? And people said, no, we prefer to stay here. So that started like a process of having all these people together, making sure that, we had food, fresh water, clean hotels. And I'm saying this because many hotels that we use normally just offer breakfast, because people like to go out and experience the country and not sit in a hotel and eat, 3 times a day. But the hotel, organized that our guests always could eat, because at the same time, we have to understand that we could not just go out and buy in the supermarket like we always can. It is so here in Peru today that, you can go out one person from each household, and Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, it is the men, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, it is the women. So, and then you have to wear a mask, you have to wear gloves, so
Right.
forward. And so we had to adapt this to our guests, because, and they go like, oh, I have to go to the supermarket to buy soap or whatever things. But all in all, these people, they got 3 meals a day, they had internet access, TV, they had a room, they had good service, clean rooms, and so forward. But I think the thing that happens is the psychological, that you're sitting in a room and you're not supposed to leave this room. And it's not like jail, but it almost feels like jail.
Yeah.
And even though that we brought a lot of table games and books and in their own languages to the hotel, a lot of people told us that it was kind of frustrating, that what was going on, that they had a hard time to concentrate.
Yeah, they're travelers, so they were expecting to be outside all the time, and now they have to stay inside. So that must be frustrating.
No, absolutely. But it's also just that you feel that your freedom kind of have been, been put in a box. But after a little while, we started to try and do some activities, but with smaller groups that would be allowed by the Ministerio de Salud. So it's the health ministry, because they came and visited the hotels and want to make sure that when people were in the same group, that there would be 2 meters distance between them, but we could still play bingo. So we would organize some bingo, and we did some talks, and we had a big TV where we could connect a computer, and we can, just like you and me, organize a few talks for our guests, and I think they were very happy that we tried to keep them entertained.
Yeah.
But quickly we realized that this was not going to only be for a couple of days, and if we were going to bring out people, we probably would need to, so to speak, lease our own plane. And it was a crazy idea at the time, but I said, what the heck, it doesn't cost anything to figure out how much it costs to rent a plane. So I started to call LATAM and a broker in Brazil and Norwegian Airlines and SAS Airlines, and said, hey, I would like to rent a plane. How much do you need? And kind of, it's crazy in the sense that we only would have maybe 30% of the plane, and then it will cost a huge lot of money. So we started to think, okay, well, let's figure out where all the other Danes are, all the other Swedish people and Norwegian people, so we can fill up this plane.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to the Danish embassy in Santiago de Chile, and I said, look, I have this crazy idea. What do you think about it? And they reacted very quickly, and they said, look, you're going to need help. And I said, oh yeah, I know I'm going to need help. And so we quickly established that, they would take care of, they would look for a plane, they would look for, a permission to land and take out our guests, and they would, create a website where people could register themselves and say, hey, I'm from Denmark, my name is this and this, I'm sitting in Urubamba in the Sacred Valley in Cusco, and I would like to go home. Or you were sitting in Mancora, or you were sitting in Trujillo, or wherever it was that you were. So we that way could create a map where are people. And that basically, the Danish government went on national TV, and I guess parents and aunts and sisters and brothers and uncles, everyone said, okay, they called their friends here in Peru and told them, you need to register. And very quickly, I would say within a day or two, we basically saw a list of people that we needed to take out of the country. We didn't have all of them, but we had most of them on the list.
Carsten,
Yeah.
1 second. We'll keep recording so we have the video for everyone, but it says that we have been kicked out of Facebook because we opted out of the platform. I don't know why.
Okay.
But let's keep recording, and
and I will just post it afterwards, and then people can see it. But sorry for that, guys. I think that the idea was that you will be able to sit here and spend Thursday morning with us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so once we had mapped out where all of these people were, it was a question of finding a plane, find out how many passengers we would have space for, and then start the whole process of applying for a permission to land. You have to remember the airport of Lima is closed, but right next to it there is a military base called Base Ocho, and there, we would be able to apply, and that process started. And while the Danish government worked on that, then it was my job to find out and say, how can we build the whole logistics to bring people in from these different places. And we basically had 3 routes, one from the north starting in Mancora and going down to Órganos, Lobitos, Chiclayo, Trujillo, and a few more places, Piura, and then ending up in Lima. Normally that is a trip of 16, 18 hours, but considering that there's a lot of stops and controls, we imagine it would take about 24 hours. And again, we were not in any rush as long as things were in place. The other route was from Arequipa, and Arequipa is also like small no, it's not 24 hours, it's less, it's about 18 hours. We had a few stops in Paracas and Ica and a few more places on its way to Lima. And then the biggest challenge was, of course, Cusco, where we had one starting in the Sacred Valley, and then we had 2 buses from Cusco City. And then the Swedish embassy called me and said, could you organize a bus for us too? So at the end, we ended up to have 4 buses with the Norwegians, Swedish, and Danish people, and that's why it was called Operación Vikingos, because now we were, getting all our fellow Scandinavian people with us, and so finding a bus company was maybe not the hardest part to find, but to find someone who was willing to put their buses and their people at risk, it's a different story, because a bus is a bus,
Right.
but you don't know what happens when a bus goes into a situation like that. But it was also a question of that you had to explain the bus drivers and the guides that this is not 40 or 50 normal people that you bring on board. These are people, some of them had been in quarantine, but all of them had been supposedly been checked and didn't have any coronavirus. But of course you expose yourself when you leave your house and participate in a mission like that. But I must say, the people of Peru with whom I worked and talked during that period, I think none of them really considered that as a risk. It was just about, how can I help? How can we help to make this work? And that was amazing. And that was from day one. It didn't matter if it was guides or chefs or police people or whatever. Everyone was eager to help. Of course, we had the process, the formalities that we had to go through. The Minister of Foreign Affairs in Denmark, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Peru, with the Swedish ambassador in Lima, with the Danish ambassador in Chile. So there was a lot of red tape as well. But in general, everyone that was invited to or asked to participate in this mission, everyone spoke with their heart and their soul. And I don't think they realized what they walked into before they actually came home. But everyone did a fantastic job. But it's not really that, under normal circumstances, it's pretty easy. What is really difficult is that, it's the logistics behind it, because the country is closed down, and you have a lot of stops and a lot of controls, and everybody wants to check you. So that's why it was really important with the paperwork and the permissions. And I remember the night before we had to. The bus company calls me, says, Carsten, we haven't received the papers to put in the window yet. And it was like 9 o'clock at night, and the first bus had to leave at 5 a.m. And I call up the Danish embassy in Chile and said, well, we send all the papers. The guy in the foreign ministry, he says, everything is sent, everything is okay. But I said, but we called the police station. They say they don't know anything about it. Well, at the end, it turned out that the guy who was in charge of the police station happened to be a friend of the family. So, we called him up and said, please, can you go and confirm whether these papers are there? And somehow the papers got stuck. But as I had copies of all the papers, I resent all of them. And then finally the original papers, arrived. But we finally were able to find out the original permissions for the buses to leave. So that was really awesome. And And then we had to bring the people from all the valley and from all around Cusco into this place where Ministerio de Salud was waiting for us. And they had basically to check every single passenger that they didn't have any symptoms of coronavirus. And we were lucky everyone was given the green light, and we could start our trip to our 28, 29-hour trip to Lima. And and that's another thing. So you also need to make sure that you have food for that amount of people. And we had 162 passengers. But so we had to talk to a lot of good friends up in Cusco to put together what we will call a safe lunch box and a safe dinner box. And when I mean safe is you cannot put anything when you don't have everything refrigerated. We needed to buy water, at least 2.5 liters per person. And besides that, we needed to have extra water. So there's a lot of things that comes into place. But people were very happy with the lunch boxes. They came out of a lot of imagination what you can do, because you have to remember you cannot go to a supermarket and just buy what you need.
Yeah.
We needed to put in a lot of fruit, some candy, chocolates, granola bars, some sandwiches, but of course sandwiches with no mayonnaise, because that cannot continue. And if you have a bad mayonnaise in a sandwich, then there's one toilet for 40 people on the bus, and that creates a problem. So you really had to think through the whole details of what you were going to offer people for that trip.
And what was the age range for the passengers? I mean, were there children too?
Yes, we had three families with small children, and I think the oldest passenger was 76. So it was a wide range of backpackers, families, elderly people. Um, but there was a very strong community on the bus. You know, everybody was on a mission to go home, and everybody was helping everyone. The guides were telling me that, you know, it was just like driving buses full of families that all knew each other, and basically very few of them knew each other. So yes, it was a wide variety of people. Well, basically, 24 to 30 hours later, the buses from all 5 destinations arrived to Lima, and we had managed to open 3 hotels. Again, many hotels have locked down. Many hotels have been asked to open up, but only to receive Peruvian citizens from abroad that had to go to quarantine for 2 weeks. But everybody arrived, everybody had lunch, everybody had dinner, everybody had a shower, everybody was able to connect on with the internet and tell their families. And then the following morning, you know, we started the big pickup with 10 buses from different hotels around Lima, and took them all to a big park near La Comar, which is our famous shopping center with a great view over the ocean. And there, you know, we will have the boarding list, and the team was, you know, checking in and making sure that everyone that was there was on the list to get on board the plane. And normally you always have no-shows that actually doesn't make it, because they get stopped by the police, or they cannot find a taxi or whatever. And some people would have to travel 60 to 70 kilometers to get to the pickup point. But I think for the first time in history, at least that's what I understand, everyone showed up.
That's amazing.
Everybody wanted to go home, and even if they had to walk all night, they wanted to make it. And we had 172 people on standby, and none of them were able to join. But I'm happy to say that all these 172 was flown out yesterday, where we had another SAS flight from Lima to Stockholm, and now everybody is home. So basically, from the operation started, wherever people were, and to they landed in Copenhagen, it was a 66-hour experience, and it worked out very, very nicely. People were calm, people were very nice, and people knew that all those people, Peruvian people who are participating in this mission, all did an extreme, incredible job.
And who were you talking to specifically back in Denmark?
So in Denmark, is a couple of representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Basically, they are the ones that are talking to the people around in Peru. They are the one who are local, localizing them and making sure that we have the right information when we are going to pick them up. They are the ones, who coordinates to a certain degree, but we go into the last final detail. I remember when we had to pick up people in the city or the El Pueblo, the Pisac. Uh, we told people, oh, you have to be at the Primax gas station, and one was very quick and Googled it, and he says, "I'm sorry, there's no Primax gas station in Pisac." And I said, "That's strange. I see it right on a piece of paper here." But apparently, a couple of weeks earlier, the gas station had changed from Primax to Repsol. So now it was called Repsol. So again, it was a lot of communication, of helping out. And at the end, there's only one gas station in town. So, but it's these small details that actually helps out to whether it's going to be a success or complete failure.
Right.
But it worked out very, very well.
That's amazing. Um, and so were there other nationalities at all who were trying to get on the same, like back to Europe, wherever, even if it was Stockholm, but they weren't from Denmark?
Oh, so I mean, most of these people were from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, but we had a couple of extra nationalities because other embassies. It's like how it works like this. Other embassies hear about. Oh, so you're having a couple of buses. Do you think you can have a space, 2, 3 seats available? And in that case, it's about filling up the bus and bringing in as many people as possible. So we had one guy from Colombia, we had one guy from Ecuador, I think we had an Austrian guy. So we had a few more nationalities, and we always said that if there was space in the bus and they had the right paperwork, they could join us. And when I mean right paperwork, is that everyone needed to have what is called a salvoconducto, which means that they are allowed to do this trip, whether they are walking on bus or on bicycle. They need to have a paper issued by the Danish or let's say the foreign and the local authorities that they can move around the country, also during the hours when it's closed.
Right. So have you been following the other rescue missions from other countries? I mean, it seems like yours was very organized. I know there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, but there's been chaos with other embassies, with, dealing with the government, things like that. But it seems like your mission was kind of smooth sailing. I'm sure it wasn't, but.
Well, I will say surprisingly, because as I said, countries locked down, and you meet police people and military, and they're unaware of the situation and how they need to react. I mean, it's pretty tough when a country closes down, because that soldier that is put to control in a certain point, he might not even have learned how to read the paperwork that gives us permission to pass. So there is a lot of talk between the bus driver and the officer or whatever, but our mission really, really went very smoothly. Yes, there are other missions and some are working better than others. I was very much inspired by the Israeli mission. That was one of the first ones. I mean, that was like a piece of art. I mean, and I go like, if I can do that, then, I'm awesome. But basically, they brought in, 4 planes and picked up more than 1,000 people. They knew more or less where everybody were, and I think that they addressed this mission as a military mission, which I think is what is really necessary to do. Because I also remember some people asking me, "Oh, I don't want to sit next to that person. I need a seat for myself." And I go like, "I'm really, really sorry. This is not a tourist excursion. This is an evacuation, and we are planning it as if it was a military, operation." because that's the only way you can do it. Of course, we want to help people, and we understand. I mean, we had a woman who had sclerose, and she was feeling very bad, so we made sure that she was having the 4 seats in the back so she could lie down, and and we tried to take care of every person's personal need. But again, we were very straightforward. This is not an excursion. This is a rescue mission, and we need to rescue as many people as possible and give them safe environment to make sure that they get all the way home.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Like, it's something that happens so quickly, like very few days, everything has to be coordinated down to the minute. So, was there anything else that surprised you about coordinating all of this? Just, I don't know, as someone who's been around travelers for so many years, of visitors coming to Peru, was there anything that surprised you about the experience of seeing people who just needed to go out? I mean, people might feel good in Peru, but they just really needed to leave, needed to go home.
I think everybody, I think in any situation that is out of anyone's comfort zone, you always seek to go back to, family and friends. And that was our job, was to make sure that people could get back to those people that they love. And I don't know if there was so many surprises. I think some people were a little bit in panic, but it was more psychological panic. It was not because they were afraid of not getting on a plane or not getting any food. It was more the thought of when is it that the plane is coming in. And we had people that was waiting for almost 2 weeks, but in the moment when that flight out of Lima was confirmed, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs went on national TV in Denmark and said, we have a plane, we have a plan, and we're going to bring people back next Friday, 8 a.m. to Denmark. Everything calmed down. And
Yeah.
everybody knew that, I want to be on a plane. Check, I have a confirmation, I am on that plane. And people were, of course, very happy with that. I think also people at the beginning had a very hard time to understand why it was necessary with this complete lockdown and these measurements that the Peruvian government took. But I think that those people that at the beginning was very critical, when they saw what happened in Italy, when they saw what happened in Spain, what happened in the US and in France, in those days after we had lockdown, people understood it was about keeping people safe.
Right.
And that was very important in the beginning. I can understand it was difficult to understand, and even we living here in Peru thought, wow, okay. I mean, I basically haven't been out of my house for 3 weeks. I just had one little visit I needed to do, but and one can feel that you are kind of locked in and so forward. But I feel safe. I feel safe in the sense that we take all the measurements to try to avoid that the coronavirus gets into our home, because we don't know how our bodies will work on it. And we have to understand that we live in a country where a lot of people lived several generations together. I mean, in Denmark, most elderly people, they live on an elderly home. And then you go, your son or your daughter comes and visits you, and they do some activities out there together. But here it's not like that. In Peru is when you get old, well, one of the kids have to take responsibility for their elderlies, and those are those that are at highest risk. So you can go out and you can be good, but you can pick up the virus and you can come home, feel nothing, and you pass it on to, grandma, and then grandma, 5 days later starts to have big problems. And you know exactly why that is. That's because you went out and you didn't clean your hands, and you didn't take off your shoes, you didn't wash your clothes, you didn't, clean the food before you put it in the refrigerator, or whatever it is that everyone needs to do to try and be safe. And that is something that we're not used to. I think it's the same in the US and in many other countries. But that's also why the death, the number of death people in Madrid and in northern Italy have been so high. It is because grandma lives with the children and the grandchildren. So
Yeah.
that's something. to take into consideration. And I think that's what is the president wanted to avoid, was to make sure that people can feel safe even though it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, as an American, I mean, Peru started this so early, and the US wasn't doing anything. And so I can kind of relate to how American tourists must have felt in Peru. It's like, why are we on lockdown if the US isn't doing anything? This isn't so bad, like it's going to go away. And but then a few days pass, and you quickly realize that we were doing the right thing. And in the US, they were just way too slow to react.
Yeah,
So
but that's also why you saw that a lot of American tourists that actually had a chance to go back decided to say, I better stay, where I am, I have fresh air, I can go out, and, and I feel safe. So, of course, many wants to go home, and many of those Americans that I spoke to are people who lives here under normal circumstances. But normally in these kind of times, a lot of people say, well, I want to go back to my home country because I know I'm a citizen of that country and I will feel safe. But just in this case, I think we had several nationalities that felt safer here than where they were coming from originally.
yeah, we had a few travelers write like articles for us that they're in the Sacred Valley. They're happy. It's quiet. Cusco is quiet, but they can still go to the market. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people felt safe here too. I was gonna ask you about the Danish travelers. Did they do the tours already, or did a lot of them not even get to see what they wanted to see?
Well, I think most of our travelers went through 40 to 60% of their program. And that is actually one of the funny things, is that we had one particular group from Denmark of 16 people, and during their waiting time, they were kind of talking about the things that they missed. And I kind of felt that when there was a discussion about, would you come back to see what you missed out, everyone in that group said, I would really, really like to come back and see what I missed out on. And the other day, we were exactly talking to a couple of those people because they called to say thank you. And they said, look, when it's safe to travel back to Peru, we would like for you to put something together for us so we can see what we missed, and maybe something that never were on our schedule. So I think they're going to come back and they're going to see Puno, the condors in the south. They're going to go to Arequipa, Paracas, Nazca, and Ica, and the desert. And I think as an add-on, they will probably go to the Amazon jungle, because that was not part of their original tour. They did manage to see the Sacred Valley, Cusco, Lima, and of course Machu Picchu. So we hope that those people who got their trip interrupted will consider to come back. And of course, we're ready to be here to help them see that and much more of our wonderful country.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we're all going to be so excited when, the lockdown is lifted, but then when tourism starts, it's going to take a while and it's going to be slow, but I think we'll all be so excited to see tourists come back and people traveling. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. We've been closed in our homes for so long. We're going to want to explore, and we're going to be able to see all these places that I mean, I have a list, like my list, like 2020 was going to be the year that I traveled in Peru and not outside of it. And it can still happen. We just have to wait a little bit.
Yeah, I think that, it will take a couple months before people start maybe to prioritize to travel. So our job here, is to make sure to keep the dream alive and show every day people the opportunities that there is in Peru to see. And, a lot of people think that, Peru is all about Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is one thing, but you know, there are so many amazing things to see and explore in Peru. And I think, you know, it's Peru is also one of these countries that has everything. You know, it has a lot of, we have all the food that we need. You know, we have all the minerals, we have all the tourist sites, we have a history that goes more than 5,000 years back, and basically, you know, people could travel around for years. But I will say, I mean, if you had 3 months, you will still not be able to see everything of Peru, and you will still be impressed every single day. So I really hope that, you know, we will use now the time to keep people informed with more articles and more pictures and more videos, and then hope when, you know, when time is right to book a new trip, that they will think of Peru and we will welcome everybody back.
Yeah, today I wrote about the islands in Lake Titicaca, and I was just, oh, I need to go back. I want to go back so badly.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
All right.
So we're
Well,
gonna upload this video so everyone can see. It's a shame that we couldn't do it all live, but there were a few hundred people who tuned in, so they're gonna be able to see the video.
yeah. Well, thank you very much, Susanna. I'll see you hopefully soon in the office. It's going to be a couple of weeks, but I look forward to see you there.
Bye, Kirsten.
Bye.